Well, welcome back into the King's Forge, and today on Sharpening Iron, we're going to be discussing mending the offending. Controversial topics within the Bible and around things where people think the Bible may even contradict itself. Does it? Well, we're going to explore some of those issues and some of those concepts as we go. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back into the King's Forge here. I'm Randy. We've got Summer at the table. And we're discussing basically controversy. We're discussing controversial topics that pop up in discussions not only between Christians, but between Christians and non-Christians. And some of these things sometimes leads to offense. Sometimes they lead to arguments and things, which is a sad commentary on the state of Christians if you're being argumentative with a faith that is supposed to be accepting and loving and teaching. It's not our job to fight and argue. And I say that in the spirit of not making an argument or building a case in that use of the word, but to become combative is not what we're about. So where do you think we should start, Miss Summer?
Well, the topic kind of comes up when you look at social media and you see Christians and non-Christians. For example, I've seen on Christian pages a non-Christian, an atheist, or someone, sometimes they're called trolls, people who will just want to stir up trouble, will post something to try to get Christians aggravated, like wanting us to prove God's existence for some way or in some way, or why does God allow suffering, that general question, or, well, why didn't God save this person if God saved that person? And they may not even ask it in a kind way, but that's generally what they're really asking. And so how do us as Christians, how are we supposed to respond when we are given those questions, whether it be in a serious manner or given those questions when they're just trying to back us into a corner?
A lot of times, especially for newer Christians, it can be very difficult to answer questions that you yourself have not really fully explored the answers to. Now, of course, our largest repository of answers that we seek and information is going to be found in the Bible. And, and it's in living. We are in the classroom of experience. And our lives are a giant study course in existence, as it were. So it can be difficult, and then you're faced with the problem of when you are coming from a Christian point of view and you're giving an answer that is based on biblical scripture. You can encounter several different types of responses to this. You can encounter somebody who genuinely wants to hear what you have to say. You can encounter somebody who doesn't want to hear what you say because it's based in the Bible. They defend your Christianity without defending the Bible. It's like saying drive your car without having an engine. You can't. It's part and parcel of the whole thing. So you can't have one without the other. There is no belief or faith without the information upon which that belief or faith is predicated. And that information is found in the Bible. and so they go hand in hand. So, and that's just sort of the way that is. We have people all the time. Well, the Bible contradicts itself on this topic or that topic, and the commandment was given, "Thou shalt not kill," and then and that was happened in the book of Exodus, and then we get to the book of Joshua, and the Lord has commanded the Israelites to wipe out certain tribes, and wipe them all out. Well, he's contradicting himself, and so they have this sort of view of some capricious God that is subject to his own whim and is not reliable, and says one thing here and does another thing there, often without other insight as to what he's doing, why he's doing, and what differences. Why does it not apply in this instance? What makes it apply in this instance? And what are there subtle differences? And those subtleties make huge impacts. He may say that, and just as an analogy, and the Bible doesn't say this, but I'm just using this as a means of communication. He may say, we do not want you to chop a tree. Okay, and then later on you'll find a passage where it says that there was 3 downed trees blocking the path, and he commands them to chop them up. In the one instance, he may be referring to saying, I don't want you to chop a tree that is growing from its root stem. He doesn't want you to fell a tree. But if it's already fallen, then it's okay to parcel it into smaller segments to make it manageable to be cleared. Those are 2 different instances that could somewhat use similar language that could cause enough confusion. And this is similar to the things that we find in the Bible. A lot of times that cause confusions like this. Go ahead. You had something to say?
Well, no, I was just thinking. It just makes me think. It's like, I think that is where a lot of the fallacies come in, and where people who have actually chosen not to believe in God, and people who have a negative perception of God, or those who are against God, will use a generalized term like that. They may even cherry pick the Bible a little bit, and then make it a general thing as a way to back us into a corner, when context is so important. And it, as you were saying, that is really the issue, where we may try to talk context, they won't hear it. They don't want to understand, and so they'll always try to switch out the words. But we have to kind of stand firm on what we understand. Always speak context. That means you're always speaking love, and you're also willing to say, I don't know, if you don't really have the full answer. Sometimes I think we as Christians will try to give answers so much that we're really not helping the situation. And we're not helping our faith, because we're just trying to give answers that people don't want to hear anyway. And what if we say something that's not false, and then, just starts the whole argument all over again? But to simply say, God's will, God knows, I don't know why, but this has happened because I understand this. I don't know why this didn't happen. Just to be willing to say, I don't know, or there's just some things about God that are still mysterious. But God is good and God is faithful. That's all we can say.
And there are also language problems. I'll give you a good example. We talk about in the Old Testament, when we talk about the customs of the Jews, there's a meat offering.
Yeah.
In the meat offering, there's no meat. It's grains and stuff. That's because in the King James English, you have to understand how language has changed and developed over time. Meat meant something a little different than what we use meat for. When we say meat in modern English, we're specifically talking about the flesh of animal. It is meat or meat product or whatever. Beef is meat. Venison is meat. In the time and period when the King James Version of the Bible was written, meat was used more loosely to refer to a meal. If you sat down to meat, That means you sat down at a table and you could be eating vegetables and bread and broth, but it meant that meal there, you know. And you also can find an instance of this back in Genesis where he says, every fruit and every tree, herb-bearing seed and all this, if these shall be for meat for you.
Yeah.
And so he gives an example there of an item or items that aren't flesh, but he says these are meat for you. In other words, these are food. And so the word meat was used a lot of times in general context to refer to food or to a meal. And so the meat offering for might be better utilized by calling it the grain offering, or the meal offering might be a better analogy for it. The King James uses the term meat offering, and we use that same terminology today. But the terms have slightly changed in their usage, and so that also can create confusions, and that can create understandings of things that are slightly askewed from their original intent. And so we find people, offering different interpretations based on their understanding, when their understanding may somewhat be flawed, or they may have a piece of information that would change their current stance on it. And the problem, or the scary part about that, is that you could be teaching somebody something that is in error, and you're propagating an error completely unintentionally. And one of the things that is the hardest thing for all of us to do is to understand, when we come into an understanding of Christianity, when we start to study the Bible, when we start to even deal with other people, we all bring to the table our own filters. We bring the baggage of our own presuppositions to every interaction and everything that we study. And we have to quieten those down and stop trying to assume that we know everything is, and be able to be informed about how things are, and not make it fit our narrative, but learn what the narrative is, and then find out, whether or not we can either adjust to it, or find out how it agrees or disagrees with us, or that kind of thing. And we're not as objective a lot of times in our study and in our interaction, as objective as would be helpful anyway. And this leads to people being offended in one way or another. And it could even be a small offense, or it could escalate up into, it could escalate into a personal fist fight. It could escalate into, factions within a body or a congregation that split and go their separate ways because they can't resolve an issue or agree to disagree agreeably. And so this is kind of the things that we're talking about here. And oftentimes we acknowledge that those things exist. I mean, I think most of us, and most of you who are listening to this, can acknowledge that you've encountered situations like that, either firsthand, or at least of somebody that's encountered situations like this. And yet we don't often try to turn the conversation to, okay, how do we educate and present ourselves in such a way as that we mitigate a lot of these offensive behaviors. Case in point, recently, there's been a lot of controversy, and I've seen a lot of offensive comments on both sides of this issue over this Olympic opener ceremony that was supposedly mocking Christianity and the Last Supper. First off, when the Last Supper was painted, it was not painted from an actual snapshot, nor was the painter there. He was painting his interpretation of an event that he had read about or heard about, and so if first off, it's ultimately that it's a painting. It's painting,
and it was done in his cultural understanding,
right? And so even if it was supposed to be a jab, let's mock the Christians with our and I'm not saying that it was or wasn't. I'm not making commentary on there. I'm saying, let's just say for sake of argument that it was. We're going to try to offend them with this by mocking something about their faith. Well, first of all, if you are a Christian and you did find that a little bit of a low blow, as it were, as a Christian, it's not my job to make my offense known on some public platform and call for canceling of the Olympics, or rallying the rally cry against them because they made fun of my religious beliefs and that's like, we're Christians, so I'm supposed to love them regardless. Mm-hmm. I'm also been informed by Christ himself that if that's the case and they're doing that because they dislike me, he said, don't be worried about that. They disliked me before they disliked you, and they're going to dislike you just because you like me. Well, okay. And you are supposed to, in turn, treat them with kindness, respect, and let their atrocious behavior speak for itself and not return in kind. Mm-hmm. So the very minute, if we feel that we're being attacked and demeaned, the very minute we respond by demeaning the other side, then we're both at fault for the same thing, and nobody really can be pointing fingers or accusing each other. Now let's speak to that. It's not my job to accuse anybody. Mm-hmm. It's not my job to assume intent. I didn't see the event unfold. I've seen photographs and snapshots on social media, and I've heard that it was a depiction of Bacchus, or I've heard it was a picture of
Dionysus.
Dionysus, which was the god of wine or whatever, mm-hmm. and merriment. And it could very well have been any of that. And if that's the case, then all these people that are claiming, if that was in fact the intent, all these people that are claiming offense are claiming offense of something that was never even intended. And now you've created uproar. You've created a situation where there really was none, just because you decided to be offended. And ultimately, nobody can offend you unless you allow yourself to be offended. I mean, somebody could look at me right now and be hateful towards me. Well, you ain't no kind of preacher because you've got hair that touches your shoulders and a long beard that looks like a lumberjack, and you're far overweight and blah 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 blah, and hurl insults at me, whatever. And I'm like, okay,
yeah,
and big deal, because I'm not worried about anybody else's opinion about me. You can like me, thank you if you do. You can hate me, that's your choice. I don't hate you back, I don't care. Or you can be somewhere in the middle, neutral. Well, I don't dislike you, and I don't necessarily like you that much, or whatever. That's fine. Because my job, I'm not here. Number one, I'm not trying. I don't have to impress you. I don't need to impress you. Mm-hmm. I don't want to impress you. I want to inform you about who Jesus was and is, and I want to inform you about what I see happening around me, what I've interpreted about our reality from a Christian perspective, because I'm Christian, to inform you about what Christianity is from my viewpoint, from my understanding, and to share that with you, not to convert you, not to make you agree with me. You can still disagree with me. Mm-hmm. My job is not to make you or force you to do anything, just to share this experience with you. This is my story. And I honestly want to hear yours too.
Yes.
And you don't have to be a Christian for me to appreciate it, listen to it, respect it.
Or have a conversation.
Right.
You don't have, that's the best conversations, is when you don't always agree.
Right. And so the thing about it is, we've got to stop labeling the human behavior problem that is really ultimately a problem with each and every individual, with a class, culture, group, or belief.
Yeah.
Well, those Christians. No, not every Christian. I was watching a program, I think within the last 24 hours, that touched on this. I can't remember what it was, but the general sentiment was very relatable, where You could say, that the black people do blank. And you're making some generalization. White people do blank. Mm-hmm. Christians do this or that, or Christians say this or act like that. And you're making this blanket statement that is in absolutely no way true, because we're all individual human beings. And even if you are part of some group or demographic, you're not all exactly the same. And so while there may be some people on both sides, or every shade of the color spectrum of human flesh, that are racist and have some prejudice against people whose skin is greatly different in tone or shade than theirs. But that doesn't speak for everybody in that class. And so, and the thing about it is those people usually who feel that, their beliefs and their validation are predicated on getting you to agree with them. I have to get you to agree with me, or somehow I'm not valid. Well, if your validation if you have to be validated by somebody else's agreement with you, you're already off base.
Your validation comes from God and God's word. I think that is one of the big issues. And when I'm thinking of the people who I know,
broad subject matter here today.
Well,
go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
We're going to tackle this a little bit by little bit. But when I think about the Christians who are offended, okay, yeah, you got that first offense, but what winds up happening, and I think this is why we as Christians shouldn't be jumping to be offended or to see something as offense, not only as you have said, it's Christ wouldn't want us to. And we can kind of get a little bit into what Christ says about why we shouldn't be offended. But think about, for example, the Salem witch trials. What winds up happening is one Christian is offended. It says, this is against our beliefs. These people are causing harm. These people are satanic, demonic. And the fear and the anger grows. And more people begin to believe it and feel the same way. Fear and anger are not of God, but it grows in us as human beings. And we feel validated because, we are defending our faith. And so it becomes like a witch hunt. And so suddenly you have a mass group of people who are offended by something and are speaking out against it and are making claims about it that may or may not be true. But all it does is it comes back and hurts our message, because what are those who are not Christians seeing happen? They are seeing our fear, our anger, and our hatred. They're not seeing our love, our grace, and our tolerance. So then they come up with the generalizations of, all Christians hate LGBTQ people, obviously. This isn't just trans people who portrayed the Lord's Supper. They just hated them because they're transgender persons. They're drag queens. So you see how we will wind up with a bad label when we show our offense in such great numbers and by great force. But instead, had more Christians shown grace and mercy and confidence with the blood of Christ that we have about who we are, and not been so offended, they couldn't make that generalization of saying that we're full of hate.
I want to speak to that, because I'm going to change the wording of what you just said, but I think that I'm going to say what you were saying in a way that I don't think you're going to disagree with, even though I'm changing how it's worded. I'm not going to say that Christians shouldn't be offended. I'm going to say that, there are some things that we should take offense to. And I'm going to speak to that wording here in just a second too, because I think it's important. But it's how we demonstrate or what we do with the offense that is really fundamentally important.
Yeah.
I mean, I can go on a limb here and say that I'm pretty confident in stating that Jesus himself got offended, and he demonstrated that when he ran the money changers out of the temple, proclaiming, "You have made this a den of thieves." He didn't do that because he was seeing daisies and tasting honeysuckle on his lips and just being, wonderful or joyful. No, he was offended that they were insulting God. Now, here's the thing. He didn't rally and go off and tell a bunch of people, well, he didn't have social media and he would have. No, I don't believe he would have. What he did was he took offense to what was happening before his very eyes that he had firsthand knowledge of, and he dealt with it at that time. Now, whether or not you approve with how he dealt it, that's on you.
Well, he had the authority to do it as well.
Well, true. But that's why I'm saying, if you agree or don't agree, okay, that's fine. I'm just stating the fact of what he did.
Yeah.
Now, those people who were there, had they taken offense and had they said something about it at that time, at that place, that's fine. But I wasn't there to witness it, and I'm not going to let some internet post make me offended on behalf of somebody else. It didn't offend me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, if you are a follower of Christ, then you must call yourself a disciple if you're genuine. And we get disciple from being disciplined. So the whole exercise of being a genuine Christian is to grow in discipline of ourselves, being able to control my tongue, being able to control my temper,
yes,
being able to control myself better, to have better discipline so that I can respond rather than react. That's what separates man from animal. Animals are mostly instinctual. They're reactionary. They react to stimuli. Men respond. Mankind, and so we have that's the separating factor. And so when we can discipline ourselves to assess a situation, get our understanding and interpretation of what it is, and be disciplined enough not to be reactionary but responsive, then we know we're growing in the right path. If you are knee-jerking responsive and just, you know what, yes, let's do this and let's do that, and you're trying to cancel, or you're trying to boycott, or you're trying to do this instead of, that I think is the wrong path if you call yourself a Christian. Well, there's a bunch of people over there, they say they're hate Christians. Really? Well, for me, that's a great opportunity to go over to them and try to interact with them and try to show them why that they could actually learn to love us if we would actually go and interact and spend some quality time with each other instead of getting our feels hurt and standing up and boycotting on our side of the street. Well, I'll show you.
Yeah. I personally am just not a easily offended person. And so I honestly I didn't watch the opener, but when I saw the post on Facebook, my first reaction was, okay, let me see this for myself. Let me look it up. Let me see what people are saying about it. And I wasn't offended by them doing it. My first thought was, that was maybe not the best portrayal, but it's also a portrayal of a painting by Da Vinci, not even the actual Last Supper. So for me, that is what how I define offense is in actions. And I don't particularly always feel that we need to take actions on things. But to your point, I do see how it is important for us Christians to be able to identify when something is offensive to God and being able to say, okay, that is not of God. I don't want any part of that. Or I'm not going to speak in any kind of support for that. And if I have the ability and the authority and the means, I can speak against it. As in relationships with someone, if somebody that you know and love is doing something wrong, then we need to speak on that. If somebody says something that is not very Christ-like and they're a family or a friend of ours, we have a job to correct them. And so that could be considered, oh, wait, what you said was offensive. Yes. But so just to clarify and what you were saying, and hopefully I am understanding what you're saying there.
Yeah, well, I mean, to use your analogy, when we see something in somebody that we that is a call for what we see as change or a possible scenario that would, from our perspective, should be changed. Let's say should be, and I'll get to that. We often take it upon ourselves to be the ones, well, we have to change it. No, we don't. I cannot change anybody but me because I don't have the authority to control anybody
and that's
but
the key word.
Me. It's not my job to change anybody. It's not my job to change your mind. It's my job to inform you in a respectable, loving way why I believe what I believe, say what I say, think what I think, what my stance and viewpoint is, what my understanding is, to share that information and understanding and listen to yours and respect if you disagree. And then I do have the right to say, you must respect me and my belief, and you have the right to ask the same of me. And so if I'm being disrespectful to you or to your belief system or whatever, and I'm doing it unintentionally, inform me. And I will apologize to you, and I will try to come at you or do whatever I'm doing in a way that's not offensive. If I'm doing it with intent, okay, then that's when, but here's the thing. Sometimes it's very hard we assume intent. Sometimes it's very hard to prove intent. Sometimes it's not. There are times when I would say you could have clear cut, we know what your intentions were. But I'd say the majority of the time, you really don't. And you're assuming intent without being actually completely informed of what intent was, and that's where we start to err. Is because we're basing on information that may or may not be true, and we do that far too often, and we do it because we're not disciplined enough to be slow to anger, as the Bible says. And I got news for you. You can't be slow to anger. If you read a post online that this happened at the Olympics and you ought to be mad, and you got mad, then you weren't slow to anger.
Right.
So right there, you already just discounted that piece of instruction and advice from the Bible. Let's take that piece of the Bible and throw it away. I don't need that. Not right now, because it's time to be offended. No. See, this is what I'm talking about is and this is what people are talking about when they say, do you walk the talk? Do you practice what you preach? And so if you're not taking these things seriously about what the Bible says Christianity is, what Christians are and ought to be, how we should conduct ourselves by being slow to anger, being wise as serpents, understanding what those people who don't like you would do, are capable of doing, and might in fact try against you, to have that knowledge to go, well, they would try to do this, they would try to do that. Well, guess what? That knowledge can steal your emotions so that when they try it to get the rise out of you, they don't get the rise they wanted to get out of you because you have more control. See?
Yeah.
But as long as they are getting the rise that they want, as long as they're getting the reaction, as long as the trolls are actually getting the reaction they want, they are actually baiting the Christians to prove, and those people that fall for the bait, what they're doing is, here's the bait, you're the fish, and I'm going to let you demonstrate to the world that your Christianity is not really genuine or strong.
Exactly. Yep. That is exactly what it is. And I think
you're a Sunday morning Christian, you're an armchair quarterback, you can, make the analogy here.
And there's so many Christians who are more mental Christians than they are heart Christians, and they are easier to bait and switch in that way. They are easier to
You have to have both.
Yeah, you do have to have understanding, you're right, but what I'm talking about is an outward appearance, or they have, well, I'm a Christian because I was raised this way, this is my culture, instead of a Christianity that comes from a heart change, a transformation.
There is, I understand. There is a culture to Christianity, but Christianity is not a culture.
No.
Christianity is a belief or a faith. And I don't even like the word religion because, anything that you engage in with some form or semblance that you can do repetitively, technically you're doing it religiously. So that, if you tailgate at every football game and you always go to a football game and you always tailgate, well, then you're a tailgater. And you're following the religion of tailgation or whatever.
Yeah, tailgation.
To be very literal in the application of that word. But now I want to speak to something that I said I was going to go back to and speak to before. Now we always use, and I love this because I think there is a beautiful simplicity to words that if we really stopped and listened and thought about them, we would have so much more insight into the nature of things than we realize. We always use a specific terminology when we talk about offense. Okay? To give offense or to take offense. Think about the words give and take. Those are relational.
Yes.
And you cannot give me offense if I won't take it. So, and so, yeah, I'm one of these people, like, I don't really, do I find it appropriate that you want to make fun of God? No. Do I find it appropriate that you want to spew hate and rhetoric or labels against Christians?
Right.
No. But I got news for you. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not offended because I halfway expect anybody that would hate Christianity to do those things.
Yes.
So I kind of see it coming, and I'm just like, okay.
And I think that is the added. I think that is the big takeaway from this one, is the give and take. And what are you willing, or no, that's not the right way I want to say that, but how not to be easily offended. People are going to offend you. People are going to want to cause harm to Christians, whether it's with their words or even with their actions. But it is what you allow to hurt you is what.
Well, you have to train yourself to be responsive, not reactive.
Yeah.
And you need to take a moment. Here's an exercise in this. Take a moment. Every time somebody has something to say to you, take a moment and weigh what they just said and say, okay, that is either a delicious bowl of ice cream or that is a bowl of needles, razor blades, pins, and steaming hot coals. And I'm going to have to eat one or the other. And they're offering this to me. No, I'm sorry. I won't take the razor blades and needles. Thank you for offering. I'm not going to take that. And you can actually respond that way even to a comment if you picture that comment that way. That comment is razor blades and nails. Nah, that's all right. Appreciate it.
Keep scrolling.
Yeah. See you later. I'll be moving on. And I don't even. Here's the funny part. I don't even have to go back and revisit it. I don't have to rethink about it. Do you hear what so and so did? No. Oh, and then you go, oh yeah, I did hear something about that. I just didn't care enough to remember. Because you don't carry all that.
Yeah.
So I'm saying you walk away from it. You only carry what you take. And so you're unburdened by so much. And so when you take offense, you're taking upon yourself a burden that you are not meant to have, number one. And so you can actually walk around clear of thought, clear of emotion. The next thing I wanted to say that I mentioned earlier, I was going to go back to, is maturity. Let's talk about this for just a second, because when you are maturing, you are becoming more and more capable of handling things. And now we'll break those things down into categories. Let's take the first category we're going to call information. Okay, some information needs to be disseminated and shared. Some information needs to be guarded. We all have it. We guard our bank account numbers. That does not need to be shared with everybody on the planet. Well, there's some. And in order to know which is which and who gets what and how much of what, you have to be mature enough to handle certain information. Okay. Well, now let's take emotions and feelings, because taking offense is emotion. If you are the kind of person that takes offense, I'm offended. I'm offended by that, and you're easily offended, you are emotionally immature.
Yes. That might hurt, but...
and do me a favor, if you don't like it, comment below.
There you go.
Because the more, it's just a sign of emotional immaturity. Mm-hmm. Somebody can hate me. Well, you're just white privilege, and you could say that because you're white.
Okay.
That's what you say. Yeah. Burger King, have it your way. It's just one of those things. I'm not going to get offended. Mm-hmm. I don't need to get offended unless it's something that I need to take offense to, and it's not reactionary, it's responsive. I need to take this as an offense. Okay, duly noted. Now I've taken the offense. Now that I've taken the offense, I need to know what to do with the offense. Okay, to handle the offense, not responsively, not reactively, but responding to it so that I can change it and actually affect something positive in those who are doing the offending, not some other entity. Mm-hmm. Every athlete that's there at people call it boycott the Olympics. Yeah. So you're wanting to punish every single athlete from every single continent that was there that had nothing to do with the opening thing just because the opening made you upset? Even if it was valid that you were upset, you're going to punish a whole bunch of people that had nothing to do with it? Come on.
Thinking about that logically, there were Christians that, we have seen, Christian media have said, watch this Olympic athlete. They're Christian. They have proclaimed Jesus. This is their church. Why wouldn't we want to support them? They had nothing to do with the opening ceremony. And just to think, this is how offense can cause harm. We are harming all of these athletes by not supporting them if we're boycotting the Olympics. And do we really want to do that? Is that really the image that we as Christians want out there? Oh, we're not watching the Olympics at all because of that opening ceremony. That's not what we really want to be out there, right? Thinking about that, just thinking about the compassion and the empathy that we as Christians are supposed to show, and how we are to encourage one another, build one another up. This is an opportunity for us to build others up, not tear them down.
We love you very much. We're glad that you tune in and you watch us or you listen to us on our podcast. We are so grateful for you. And we want to hear from you. We want to know what your thoughts and questions are. And we want to be able to discuss those things here on Sharpening Iron. So if you would, reach out to us and send us your questions, your emails, your comments. And you can reach us by writing to randy@sharpening-iron.com. Or you can also write to onekingsforge@gmail.com. That's the number one, kingsforge@gmail.com. You can also write us by post by writing to the King's Forge, P.O. Box 2590, Shelbyville, Tennessee 37160. And as always, if you want to know more about who we are, you want backlog to our past content, you can find that at thekingsforge.org. Thank you once again for listening to us. We love you. We want you happy. We want you blessed. And we want you back here in the King's Forge. Thank you.
If you've ever wondered, am I fully in? If you've ever wondered, am I walking in the fullness of genuine, empowered Christianity? Or do I sometimes feel like maybe there's something missing? I've written a book. It's called Christianity Untried, and I would be grateful if you would head on over to barnesandnoble.com and order a copy for yourself.